What's good, family? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, the host of Black and Published podcast and the author of the novel The Seven Daughters of Dupree. This historical fiction novel is about the secrets kept between mothers and daughters over the course of 7 generations and is told backwards in time from 1995 to 1860. I have an excerpt from the novel for you today. The audiobook is narrated by Bonnie Turpin, and this scene you're about to listen to is from the prologue.
Prologue. They cut off her head because she ran. But who could know? Certainly not Tati. She was looking for her daddy. Her mama Nadia wouldn't tell her. Gladys, her Mimi, wouldn't tell her either. So she searched for him. She didn't know to search for anyone else. It wasn't like there was a burial or body. No coffin, no cemetery. But in a way, she found her. In fact, she found them all, including her daddy. In the kitchen table whisperings and the basement murmurings, where her mother used a hot comb to press out her hair every Saturday night.
I hope you enjoyed that scene from The Seven Daughters of Dupree, narrated by Bonnie Turpin. The novel is available everywhere books are sold and in whatever format you prefer: hardcover, ebook, audiobook, and large print. So, if you can, please consider getting a copy of The Seven Daughters of Dupree today. Now, let's get to the episode.
The first thought that I had is like, you always said that you're going to write a book and you never did. Like, you could die and you did not do this one thing that you said that you've always wanted to do.
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published on the Mahogany Books Podcast Network, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. We're kicking off Women's History Month with Jodi-Ann Burey, author of the book Authentic, The Myth of Bringing Your Full Self to Work. Part memoir, part sociological study of how women, queer, disabled, and minoritized people are discriminated against in the workplace. The book is an outgrowth of Jodi-Ann's 2020 TED Talk on the same subject that's been viewed nearly 2 million times.
There's so much in here because if we're talking about the fullness of who we are as people, why should that not also exist in the page? And so that translation, I think, was difficult because a TED Talk is a product. It is the presentation of a final argument. But a book allows you to show process, to think alongside someone where I don't have to have answers, but we can think together through this.
Jodi-Ann's relationship to work and writing shifted significantly in 2018. The life-threatening health diagnosis she received that forced her to conquer her fear and fulfill her dream of writing a book. Plus, the predatory publishing offers she received after her internet virality and how she sorted through them to find a publisher who was right for her. And the reason she says the future of work depends on other people and their willingness to protect each other in the workplace. That and more is next when Black and Published continues. All right. When did you know that you were a writer?
I knew I was a writer very, very early. I loved writing poems in middle school and high school. I wasted a lot of my talent writing poems for boys that I liked. And to be honest, into my adulthood, continued wasting my time writing about boys. And so I spent a lot of time writing poetry. I felt like a writer most during that time. I was just very struck by the Columbine shooting. And I wrote a poem in school to kind of process the news. And there was something about doing that that felt incredibly cathartic. But I also remember liking the poem itself. So I like both the process and the thing that I created, and rereading that over and over to myself mattered to me. So I think that really seeded that kind of early sensibility that I have talent, there's joy, and there's some type of emotional connection to putting words on the page. I felt like a writer for real when I was in college. And I wrote like my first big research paper. It was like a capital I idea. I spent so much time on it. And when I handed it in, I felt like I was birthing something. And I went back to my dorm room. I'm like, yo, this is knowledge. Like I created knowledge. Like, so that's when I started thinking about how to write professionally, like how to integrate writing into a career. That's when I started thinking about publishing, and for a long time pursued wanting to create a career in academia. And so I think that's when writing professionally started to map onto my identity.
Understanding that writing professionally included publishing as part of the process, when did you make that pursuit the career?
If I were to look back at all my journals from that time, I've been keeping journals since 2008 until now, pretty consistently, I would say that probably every month, every other entry is me saying, okay, you're going to write an essay a month and you're going to get published in all of these different places and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I took all these writing classes and like, you're going to write a book, you know, you're going to be a serious writer that publishes multiple times a week. Like I just had so many, I had a lot of pressure on myself of if you're a writer, you need to be published, and not being able to do that, or maybe not pursuing it. Like I had the desire, I had the drive, but it just wasn't showing up in my actions, you know? I beat myself up about that for most of my adult life. And I could say that I did graduate college in 2008. It was a pretty scary time to be in the workforce and being out on my own, living in New York and trying to build a life, you know, adulting. There was so much desire and drive to figure out who I was in as an adult, establish myself. There was the desire to write, and I just, maybe it was fear, and I just never published anything. And I don't know, if I'm being honest, if I pursued that in a serious way.
When did the seed for authentic set into your spirit for you to make it a book? Because I know at first it was a TEDx talk.
The seeds of that actually started in 2018. So in March 2018, I was diagnosed with a spinal cord tumor. And at that point, I had been experiencing these random symptoms for about 3 years, and then finally got the answer to what had been going on with my body. And so, as my physiatrist put it when he told me, and the surgeon consultations that I had, is that if I left the tumor inside my body and didn't do any treatment, then I would be paralyzed for the rest of my life from the neck down, completely paralyzed. But if I did the surgery to remove the tumor, potentially chemo, potentially radiation, but the first step was surgery because they would have to cut my spinal cord. The tumor was inside of my spinal cord, that the surgery itself carried those same risks. That if something went wrong in the surgery, I would be completely paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of my life. And so I got treated at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and the surgery thankfully removed the tumor completely, but the surgery had partially paralyzed me. And so I spent maybe 3 weeks in the hospital just rehabilitating my ability to walk, rehabilitating my ability to use my hands. It was a really difficult time. But in between that, I do remember that night when I was diagnosed, I happened to have Hamilton tickets, and the immigrant in me was like, I spent money on them tickets, baby. I will be at the show. I don't remember anything that happened. I have no memory really of being there, if I'm being quite honest. Anytime I try to recall it, I just think of watching the play on like Disney Plus, but I don't remember physically being in the theater. But I do remember spending most of that time crying. And the first thought that I had is like, you always said that you're going to write a book and you never did. Like you could die and you did not do this one thing that you said that you've always wanted to do. And so that kind of urgency of having more integrity with my word and not lying to myself anymore was a huge driver during that time. But I will say, for anyone who's gone through any type of major health crisis or any type of crisis, you get hit with a lot of platitudes, like take it one day at a time, you're a warrior, we can beat this. And so everyone's just like saying all these things to me all the time. And I became incredibly sensitive to platitudes. And so when I went back to work, I was off of work for 4 months for disability leave. And then I changed industries and I entered this hashtag girl boss women's kind of startup space. That whole space is filled with so many platitudes. And so then I started taking that contrarianness and irritation that I felt at the like one day at a time to what are the lies? What are these narratives? What are the platitudes within the workplace? And so that seeded this pushback against imposter syndrome, against authenticity, this whole sense of coming just as you are. And I started like talking a lot about it, doing some podcasts, doing some keynotes, and I just would not stop talking about it. And so that became the TED Talk. And if anyone has ever done TED in a way that kind of takes off, it had a healthy run on the internet for a little bit. And as soon as it published, not on TEDx Seattle, but on TED, when TED had pushed it out, it created a lot of energy and like inbound opportunities for turning that TED Talk into a book. I will say, if anyone's experienced any type of virality that can translate into a book, the outreach or the inbound attention can be incredibly predatory, where people are saying, we can do this. And I remember this agent sent me a contract and was like, from the time of this email, you have to sign with us within, I don't know, a year to do X, Y, and Z. Like just a lot of pressure where people are just like blowing air at you. It's going to be so great. You're going to be your first time author. And like, you're just kind of swept up in the like, oh my gosh, this is the thing that I want. This is amazing. And because I've already gone through that, I was like, this is predatory. This is bullshit. No, no, no.
What do you mean you
And
had already gone through that?
just gone through people just saying things to you that don't align with reality.
Okay, the platitudes again.
The platitudes, yeah. So through that process, I started thinking about, okay, what would a talk look like in book form? How would it be different? How would it stay the same? Who would it be for? And in the kind of year and a half from TEDx Seattle, I had the opportunity to work with Flatiron, and it was just a really good match.
Was Flatiron one of the publishers or the representatives that reached out to you after your TEDx Seattle talk was pushed out by Big TED, which I'll make a note for the listeners who have never done a TEDx. I did 2 TEDx's. They were not pushed out by Big TED. TEDx is our independently organized TED events, but TED always has the option to tap those independent events for content for their main stage platforms and then push them out to their larger TED audience of tens of thousands of millions of people. So yes, after your talk got the Big TED treatment, was Flatiron one of the people in your inbox saying, hey, we have something for you? Or did you still have to go through the traditional book proposal agent query submission process?
I don't know how useful it is to other people. And maybe there's some utility in the understanding that there is a traditional way of entering publishing. You have the query letters, you get an agent, the agent works on your behalf and puts you out on submission. Like there is that traditional process. But the reality is, I don't know anyone who has gone through a traditional process. I don't know a lot of people who it unfolded that way. I think the way that we learn that traditional publishing works is just the only way that you can teach people and prepare people for what like a standard process is. But the reality is that people find their agents in a whole bunch of different ways that maybe doesn't come directly from a query letter. People are offered deals without having a proposal. There are so many different entry points, but those entry points are unpredictable. It depends on the market. It depends on, did that right person hear you doing this thing? Did that person have enough agency and power within their institution to advocate for someone who's unknown? There's just so many parts of it that are unpredictable. And I wouldn't say that what happened to me would be useful for other writers to aspire to, because you just cannot recreate all of the things that have to fall into place for something like that to happen. And so after my TEDx Seattle got pushed out to Big TED, which itself was maybe 5 months, when TEDx Seattle went out in November 2020, nothing about my life changed. When it went out to Big TED in March 2021, my inbox became almost unmanageable in the best ways because I wasn't working. And then that created this whole suite of my professional life. 99% of my finances, all my income came from speaking engagements. And so people wanted me to speak about the TED Talk, which I did find a little difficult because I'm like, just play it. I don't know what else to say. Like, I was really like, what else do you want? It felt very complete to me. So I really didn't know what else there was to say about it. But because I was having so many conversations about authenticity in the workplace, and I would tell people about my experiences and they would tell me about theirs, there just became so many voices around the topic. And so, though I thought TEDx was the end of something, I realized it was the beginning of something else. And so, I had a few offers from agents in that time that I said no to, at a few offers from publishers during that time that I said no to and didn't feel bad or guilty or like, oh, I don't know. I was like, this just doesn't feel right. And then in 2022, because I've been doing a lot of podcasts with other people, that's when I heard from Flatiron. And when I connected with the team, when I looked at the offer, when I kind of sussed it out, I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Thank you for sharing. And I will just note that I've been doing the show for 6 seasons. There is no one or right way along the road to publication. And so I think asking those questions helps the audience to understand, do your work and live your life and take whatever opportunity comes your way.
No, that's real. And you have to be in those spaces. So, like, for people to know that there are alternative ways, I wouldn't aspire to that, just kind of waiting for chance. Like, I think those chance encounters happens when you're already doing your work, when you're already passionate about the thing that you're doing, you're in the right spaces, you're in the right communities, and laws of attraction, the situation will unfold the way that it needs to. And this is a little bit in the book when I almost said no to TED, is this sense of like, will people think that I deserved it? We know that meritocracy is not real, especially as Black women. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter what your credentials are. You can be the most talented, like on the face of the planet, and people will still treat you like you just got this, like you didn't work for it. And I always talk about like, yeah, it'll be nice to like not work for stuff. There are a bunch of white dudes out here that are untalented and didn't work for shit. Like, why can't I also just roll over and get $100 million for a startup just because my uncle knows somebody?
That's the gotcha, though.
Mm-hmm.
Deservingness has been co-opted and warped and weaponized against the very people who need more help and who need equity into thinking that, oh, well, if you just work for it and earn it by merit, then you'll be worthy of it. And that's not the truth. That's the myth of meritocracy that has been purported over deservingness. And so as you're talking about the book, your publication process, and even like doing the TED Talk, you've always wanted to write. And you've always wanted to write a book, as came so clearly to you while you have a tumor in your spinal cord. It's like, fuck, I never wrote my book. So whether it was going to be about authenticity or whether it was going to be a novel about who shot John doesn't matter. That was always something that you wanted to do. And the way that it came to you may not have been through the MFA program or the query letter or the agent, but it was deeply rooted in work that you were already doing. So you deserve all the good things of the labor that you had already put out.
I don't have a language in politics around deservedness. I just say, for me, it's like, I'm a human being. If you want to be healthy, if you want to make like these things, they should be accessible to you, right? There are some parts of living that are inherent to the fact that you are alive. And so if I have a dream for something, then why not? So for me, it's like, yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I have that? It's not about me deserving it, but like, why can't I? And so you can answer that question in a number of different ways. But I do think that if you have a dream for something, it should be accessible to you.
And so then in your dream for your book and doing the work around your TED Talk about authenticity, did that feel right for you as the first book, or do you have designs to be a different kind of author?
I don't know if I think about it in that way. Any process teaches you so much. And so I think it unfolded the way that it was supposed to. Yeah, I don't know if I think about it in that type of way, but I do love the TED to book translation. That was really interesting. It was incredibly challenging. Like I said, I did a 15-minute speech that took me 7 months to write. I felt like I said all I had to say. Like, I'm the type of person who has more breadth than depth. And so when I feel like I'm kind of in the waters of something already, I'm kind of ready to just move on to something else. I really did feel like I don't got nothing else to say about this. So when I started connecting with other people, and I'm like, okay, what about this? And what about this? And so I did have more ideas. I do think I was a little tapped out of continuing to talk about it, though, because at that time I had been working for myself. And so that urgency and rage and anger that I had about racism within the workplace, I wasn't feeling it as immediately when I was writing the book. But I think that's helpful, right? To have a little bit of a distance from the workplace, from coworkers, to really think through my work history. And the fact that something that had happened to me 10, 15 years ago, when I would talk to friends who were currently still in traditional work, and they're like, yeah, that shit happened to me last week. I'm like, oh, okay. This is wild. Okay, let's and then it's there are some structural things, like, does the structure of the book take on the structure of the talk? Does the audience shift? How do you make a book about work literary? It was really important to me to write the book in my voice, write the book in the way that I want. And my voice does not really align with the way most books about work are written. People write artfully about voting. They write artfully about poverty, incarceration, and all of those things. And so, why is it that when we're talking about work, we don't have an artful experience with our professional lives? We spend so much time at work thinking about work, but there's no book, there's no voice, there's no kind of safe space to really think about it and engage with it in a more dynamic way. And so I think for a book that's titled Authentic, right, it really pushed me to bring that fullness of who I am to the page. And so most of the scenes in this book are not in an office. There are non-traditional voices in here. There are extended conversations with my parents. There's an extended discussion about Insecure. There's so much in here because if we're talking about the fullness of who we are as people, why should that not also exist in the page? And so that translation, I think, was difficult because, a TED Talk is a product. It is the presentation of a final argument. But a book allows you to show process, to think alongside someone where I don't have to have answers, but we can think together through this. And so once I realized that I was going to do that and not that kind of TED structure, that gave me so much freedom. Like, I could have written about anything because it wasn't about work. It was about me. It was about the art of creating, these ideas and bringing all these voices onto the page.
Can you read something from Authentic and we can dive further into this book that you have written so literarily artfully?
You're so funny. Okay.
Jodi-Ann Burey's book, Authentic, The Myth of Bringing Your Full Self to Work, shatters the belief that being yourself is enough to survive harmful workplace cultures. Whether you're in corporate or nonprofit spaces, Jodi-Ann's tome breaks down why code switching won't save you, the real reason DEI died, and why even though companies, organizations, and governments have enough resources to help their people, they don't. Here's Jodi-Ann.
I'm going to read from something that it's pretty much right in the middle. Part 2 of the book is called Authenticity as Myth. And there's where I unpack a lot of the myths that we have about work and what authenticity is supposed to do for us and what it can do within institutions. And so I wanted to start that talking about a Jamaican myth, because I'm Jamaican and through the process of migration feel somewhat disconnected from that in a lot of ways. So this part of my writing process was really fun and trying to reclaim some of the stories that maybe I would have heard if I still lived in Jamaica. So this chapter is called Shape Shifting Myths. The myth of Old Haig, a shape-shifting, vampiric, witchy woman, haunts much of the Caribbean. She walks by day as a meek and miserly old haggard, but by night, once a stilled silence settles beneath a darkened sky, old Hag sheds her skin like a dropped coat, useful, but too heavy to carry for long. Unweighted, old Hag soars above the village as her true self, a cannonball of fire, according to Guyanese folklore, or an owl, according to the Jamaicans. The myth warns mothers to keep watch over their young at night or leave a Bible open near their bedside. Old Hag preys on infants, feeding from their breath and blood before she returns to human form. I asked my mother about Old Hag, the owls, the babies, the Bibles, from what I imagined to be an hours-long romp between her and her younger sister. I learned my grandmother left the Bible open near each new baby as they slept, day and night. Mama read passages aloud over my mother and her 9 siblings. Her breath, a microscopic cloak of protection. To feel close to Mama, I'd imagine she kept watch as I slept during the little time we had together before my parents moved us to the United States. During our last Christmas Zoom, my aunt reminded the 40 or so of us present. Those prayers Mama whispered at 4 o'clock in the morning still cover this family today. I find it hard to believe old Haig hurt children. Not because such an act violated some eternal natural order, but because of a learned weariness towards myths about women. History often casts women who subvert social norms as sorcerers. We are taught to fear women who know enough about the world to shift our shape, who even in their stolen moments of freedom, rather than remaining quiet, chose to boast through the skies. A free woman is a dangerous contagion. Perhaps this is why she seeks out the young, not yet tainted by expectation, so they can know what a free woman looks like. I'd like to believe Ohio did not suck blood nor breath because I know the mere presence of a powerful Black woman, unmasked and unbothered, is a type of beauty that can leave its beholder breathless. On the phone, my mother said that in nature, what is shed is let go for good. Snakes regrow their skins. Hermit crabs find new shells. But in our work lives, like Ohig, we return to these vacated skins over and over. We tuck our wings to appear smaller, starve our fires to a small, flickering flame, lest we shine too bright, and await the golden hour to reveal ourselves again. These shed skins are still ours, useful, but also the shit that weighs us down. It is said you can ward off Ohide by rubbing salt and pepper into her abandoned flesh, as if pressures to comply and conform could burn her any more. I'd like to think of the salt and pepper as those spiced slices of life spent with people who know me in places that affirm my worth. It becomes more difficult to cover myself again. I believe my mother chose not to pass down the story of old Haig because she knew a woman in flight must not be feared, but followed.
Thank you. What is the myth of bringing your authentic self to work?
The myth of bringing your full authentic self to work is this idea that by coming as you are, by bringing this whole self, that is potent enough to change institutions. That you being who you are, me being who I am, that can function like a contagion, right, within institutions. And that's just not how institutional change works. And the fact is that your managers, your bosses, your leaders, these institutions, they know that. And so basically, it just puts us on this treadmill. We are so exhausted and we're still in place. we're still in the same place that we started. And so for me, I see authentic largely, because I have a public health background, like as a health intervention. What are ways that we can kind of abandon this like false binary of this is authentic, this is not authentic, this is who I am, this is not, this is code switching. Okay, if I do this, okay, if I do that, and just take a beat and just realize that these institutions, they already know what they need to do. They're actively choosing not to. But when the political incentives reward diversity, equity, inclusion, they use us to scapegoat that work, that by us being ourselves could say something about the institution. But the reality is these institutions are unchanged. And we see that since Trump came into office, how easily it is to abandon a lot of those programs and initiatives.
In the book, you talk about your experiences at 3 specific workplaces, and you refer to them as the retailer, the org, and the startup. And what was striking to me, and you mentioned that you were at this like girl boss startup that was all very rah rah, go girls, but
Yeah.
didn't have pay equity, all these, trash ass behaviors that you would find in corporate America. Do you find any difference between nonprofit spaces and corporate spaces when it comes to being supportive of workers in their authenticity?
I can answer that two ways. I could say, no, I don't. Nonprofits are just as fucked up as for profit spaces. And I think what I'm arguing in the book is that, yes, it is actually worse in the mission driven sector because we have different expectations of that sector. We actually go to nonprofits for safe haven from the bullshit, right? Our guards are down. We are so hopeful about this change that we can create in the world. And so when you go there excited, when you see other people of color, other queer people, other disabled people working on behalf of your own communities, when you see them also being fucked up, it's more corrosive. Because one, you didn't go into those spaces thinking that you had to protect yourself, so you're more exposed. And two, I thought good work happened here. And so if the good work does not happen here, where the hell is it happening? And so it can turn you away, not just from the organization, not even just from the sector, but it can corrupt your own values. That working on behalf of the planet or on behalf of justice or on behalf of all of these issues that we wanted to work towards in this organization, maybe we abandon that completely. And that is a much deeper betrayal than if I went to some widget making company and I'm like, we make widgets here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm not saying that it's better there. I'm just saying that the place that we thought we would be safe can be even more corrosive.
In the section that you read, you talk about the myth of Ohag, which is from Jamaican folklore and mythology. You are Jamaican. You interviewed your Jamaican parents on the low to get them to to get them to be more honest than if they saw the recorder going off in front of them. What has your heritage and your parentage taught you about the myth of authenticity and the need to code switch?
I see them do it constantly, right? I see how they talk with me, which is why I had to secretly record them because I tried to record them properly once and they just started speak. I'm like, I've never heard you talk like this in the house, and I've never heard these stories. I don't understand the people that are sitting in front of me. And so I wanted to have like a real conversation with them. And so that's why I had to secretly record them. They're my parents. I'm sure it's fine. I don't think they're particularly litigious against their own children, though some families be like that, right? So, but what they teach me about code switching, I think that's how they wanted to protect me. That code switching was protection. I remember the first predominantly white school that I went to was middle school. And before middle school, I think it was a couple days before, my mom, she's like, okay, I'm going to take you to get your hair permed because I don't want you to feel bad that your hair is not straight. And at that time, the culture is so different now, but at the time, I was like, yes, because having straight hair was a rite of passage. Like, ooh, I'm grown now. Like, look at my straight hair. And then walking into that school and also realizing having straight hair ain't protecting me. That's not protective. I grew up going to a very, very, very Jamaican church. I think like 95% of the people in church were Jamaican. And the love in that space, I think that's the place that taught me Jamaicanness, like having not been able to go to Jamaica as often as I want. Most of my family still lives there. And so having that church community was really important for me culturally. But seeing them even code switching, like who gets to hear a patois interpretation of the Bible, like from the pulpit? And so just seeing, I think Kiese Lehman had said this in a podcast, the rhetorical flexibility of our people and witnessing the power that it can have in taking on different forms. But the reality is that I felt the most joy when we would be code switching within our own communities. But outside of our communities, code switching, it does not protect you. You still Black, you still a woman, you still, insert identity here. Code switching is not going to help you. And I think being able to push back against that to my own parents' teachings makes me incredibly unruly. If I can push back against my parents, you think I give a fuck about what you're telling me? These people raised me. So if I can push back against them, I have like very little respect for authority, which is why I've been fired so many times. But it's just like, which release me, please. Thank you. Thank you. This was not working. And now I get to have severance. Like, that's great. Like, it makes it really difficult for other people to try to convince me of something that I know fundamentally is not true.
So then, in your opinion, your research, your experience, what can protect non-white or queer or disabled or women in the workplace?
Other people,
How so?
in some of the worst places that I've worked, thinking about my time at the startup, it's like women's focused company. The company itself was a hot mess. I have never in my life worked with that caliber of talent. There were so many talented women that worked there. We are still in communication. We still work together in like independent projects and stuff. Like there's still a close bond, but I could not have survived that workplace without the people around me who can be a little subversive in the work that we're doing. Me and a friend of mine were in collusion about increasing deaf accessibility within the events that we were doing. There were ways that we were trying to create connections with each other beyond the gaze of the company that mattered to my health, my well-being, the ways that we were able to work together, what we were able to achieve with each other. Like there was that understanding of being in community with other people that provided a level of support and recognition. It's because of those relationships that other professional opportunities have come up. And so that's just me and my personal experience. But when we think about there are companies all over Seattle, all over the country that are fighting to unionize. You can't do that unless you have close community connections. There are workers who are on the front lines pushing back against all these oppressive policies, especially since the pandemic. And you cannot do that if you're not in relationship with people, right? If you don't trust people that you're working with or even people outside of work. And so Tressie McMillan Cotton had a live recently, and the pushback that she gets sometimes is like, your analysis is great, but what are we supposed to do about it? So my job is the analysis. But if I were to tell anybody to do anything, pick an issue, do something about it, and do it with other people. And so when we think about this incredible level of occupational violence that we're experiencing, you cannot deal with that alone. And so I'm not saying that you need to be in community to support your ability to withstand it, right? Because that kind of corrosive impact on your health and well-being will still be there. But with other people, you might be able to do something about it. With other people, maybe you go somewhere else. With other people, maybe you can make like structural institutional changes at that company, in that office, in the industry, in how we understand work. The fact that even right now we have weekends as a concept came from people working together for labor protections, workers' rights. You can't tap into any of that by yourself.
So with all of that said, and given the climate that we are in where, the pandemic allowed a lot of people to work from home, which made greater accessibility and room for people from systemically disenfranchised backgrounds, such as being disabled or a minority or queer or even a woman, to access the workplace in a way that was more hospitable for them. And now a lot of those pandemic era protections are being rolled back with mandated return to work, return to office space orders, which is really about real estate and money, but we won't dwell.
Exactly.
Given all of that is happening and the constant assault on unions from major corporations and even the presidency, what do you think is the future of work?
If all things stay the same, it's bad. Think of any dystopian novel that you've ever read or movie that you've watched. It's bad, bad. We hate workers so much, but we have to work. We don't respect people's time, their health, their well being, their ability to create a good life for themselves. I think everything's pointing to more violence, more discrimination, more surveillance, the use of harmful technologies, this like grow, this insatiable appetite that capitalism has for all of our resources and resources, including our lives. It's not good. I worry about that every day. I'm a writer. Tell me what the job prospects are in this era for a Black woman who has opinions.
It's sitting behind a mic like this one in your closet that's across from your bathroom and your bedroom. Yeah.
You know, it's terrifying. And I think what's so immoral about this country is that our productivity is linked to our access to healthcare. It is terrifying how unhealthy our workforce is and how quickly they want to push us out.
And it's not just productivity that is linked to your access to healthcare, but your productivity is tied to whether or not you will receive enough money to feed your family. Your productivity is tied to whether or not you can have housing and a roof over your head. So productivity only being tied to your access to health insurance is actually a privilege that some people don't even have the access to.
Exactly. And so I think for me, what I'm looking into now, and I touch a little bit on in the book, like there are all these post work theorists. Why do we have to work to live? Like work is so coercive to our survival. And how do we think about our lives as human beings outside of work? What are the folks that are working towards universal basic income, guaranteed income? What does that look like? Universal health care, universal child care. It's not that we don't have the resources to do any of this. We just don't.
Because everything has become a commodity and a way for other people to make money and become rich and
Exactly.
wealthy and to exploit others.
Exactly. And so I do think it will break every dystopian novel. There's some kind of massive worker uprising. Do I want to be here for that? It depends. You know, I got to sharpen my tools to see what we got to do. You know, like put me in, coach. And there's part of me that's like, this is going to be so bad. So I don't know. I don't have anything optimistic to say. If I were to try to end less doom and gloom, there are really good people all over the country that are doing really, really good work, that are trying to think through universal access for healthcare, childcare, guaranteed income, and those experiments in the small ways that they're rolling out, they have been successful. Will that take on? It's up to us. It's up to the thing that you're doing and who you're doing it with in order for us to change the tide. And I think if we get more real about how bad it can be, maybe that will create more urgency. Because right now, what I feel like people are doing is like, this is bad, but it's not really touching me yet. It's coming for all of us, baby.
Just like ice.
Truly.
All right. That isn't very positive, but we're going to keep on going to this here speed round and this here game we got. So, Jodi-Ann, what is your favorite book?
I'm going to do a couple of different genres. Pick another essays, Tressie McMillan Cotton. I have to say that one point writing this book, I wrote in my journal, I just want to write a book that Tressie would like. So I love Thick. I've read it maybe 8 times. And I continue to read it. I probably need a clean copy because even if something's already underlined, I underline it again. That book weighs more in highlighter fluid and pen ink than like the actual pages. That's where we're at. Okay. The Cancer Journals by my girl Audre Lorde was foundational to my recovery process. When We Were Sisters by Fatima Asghar. My God, I did not know a novel could do that. Love that book down, down, down. And Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib. Just everything he writes is incredible. And that was my first book of his that I read.
So who is your favorite author?
Tressie McMillan Khan, Kiese Layman, and Disha Filyal are that's like my trifecta of like love, not just their work, but their literary citizenship, how they show up in the world. Like those are my kind of North Stars right now of like what does it mean to be an author? What does it mean to be a literary citizen?
Who is your favorite artist?
My favorite visual artist is Christina Martinez. She's a local to Seattle painter. Love her work down, down, down. I also met an artist in New York recently, Magin Isaac, and it was the first painting that I acquired. And so I've been in my art bag now. So anything that those two women produce, I'm obsessed.
What is your favorite TV show?
I don't have one. I recently canceled all my streaming. So I don't have any streamers that I'm watching, but I still do watch Abbott Elementary. So we'll go for that. It's like the one thing that I watch.
It's a bright spot. Normally I ask people, what do you think is the best, like who they think would like play their characters in a book? But since yours is nonfiction, what do you think is the best office sitcom?
I would say Insecure. It's not an office sitcom, but I watched it for this book in detail. And I promise you about 50% of the scenes are in workplaces. And so that's why I was like very drawn to it. And there's a whole section of the book that just is drawing from that show.
Yes, the deep discussion on Dada not staying at the law firm with Molly. If money were no object, where would you go? What would you do? And where would you live?
I would be completely nomadic. I would just live everywhere and do everything.
Name 3 things on your bucket list.
I would love to live several years outside of America, if not migrate out of America. I would love to live in a country that had stronger food regulations because I just think the food in this country is so unhealthy. And I just don't trust that it will get better. So that's 1. 2, I would love to be fluent in Spanish. I was supposed to do study abroad in Ecuador and I backed out at the last minute. So I've always regretted that. And I would love to be fluent in ASL.
What brings you joy?
So I've been an aunt since I was 13 years old. It's the probably strongest part of my identity. And I love being an aunt. I love spending time with my nieces and nephews. Again, if money was no object, I would just like live with them. I would just rotate. There's 9 of them. So I would just like rotate and just like live with them. I am at my most joyful at like a middle school spring concert. I would also like to take the route, like Route 66. Let's go. Like I love it. I love when kids are crying on stage when they're doing their dance recital. Like I love all of it. Bring me to a spring concert. Happy, happy, happy.
What brings you peace?
Water. I love being around water. I love being on water, in water. My summer activity is paddleboarding. And so just getting on the paddleboard and just letting the ocean take me, letting the lake take me. I love it. I love water.
So our game is called Rewriting the Classics. Classic is however you define it. Name 1 book you wished you would have written.
A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdurraqib.
Name a book where you want to change the ending and how would you do it?
So my good friend Sonora Ja wrote a book last year called The Laughter. And I can't say how I would change it because it would give the ending away. I don't care about spoilers, but I want to be sensitive to people who do. And I want to be sensitive to Sonora, who would hate if I gave the ending away. But because she's my friend, I know what the ending was supposed to be. And so I am grateful for the bit of grace that she offered with the little spot of hope. And if I were to change it, what happened would not have happened at all, not even close, not under any circumstances.
Big feelings on that one.
I have so many feelings.
Keep that same energy. Name a book that you think is overrated or overtaught and why.
I would say To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't know if they still teach that. I remember really enjoying that book because I liked Scout. I thought she was spunky and I saw myself in her. But there's just so many other books, and I just would not want my nieces and nephews to have their early entry points into issues of like racism and discrimination and injustice within the legal system for Black people through some white lady's book.
Final question. When you are dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about the legacy of words and work that you've left behind?
That Jodi-Ann was unapologetically herself.
Big thank you to Jodi-Ann Burey for being here today on Black and Published. You can follow Jodi-Ann on the socials at Jodi-Ann Burey on Instagram and Threads. And make sure you check out Authentic. It's out now from Flatiron Books. You can get a copy of the book from Mahogany Books and get 10% off your first purchase using code BLACKPUB at checkout. That's BLKPUB. That's our show for the week. If you like this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Jodi-Ann about her early years of wanting to be a writer, but not going after her dream because of work and fear. Make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week when our guest will be Lauren Morrow, author of the novel Little Movements.
This is a book about someone starting over and about how scary it can be when you are at a certain point in your life and you get an opportunity to do something that you've always wanted to do. Like, what does it mean when you finally get that chance? And like, how does that change your life?
That's next week on Black and Published. I'll talk to you then. Peace.
What's going on, family? This is Derek Young
and Ramonda Young,
owners of both Mahogany Books and the Mahogany Books Podcast Network.
We really want to thank each and every one of you for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, drop us a review and rate us on whatever platform you download podcasts on.
We truly appreciate each and every one of you for supporting us and making us your go-to for Black books. And we look forward to connecting with you all sometime in the future.
Thank you again, fam. And always remember, Black books matter.